Welcome to Storyforge Live. I'm Barry Chandler and I'm here with Hayley Boning. We are the co-founders of Storyforge, and we have spent the last 6 years helping businesses be more meaningful, relevant, and impactful to those that they serve so that they're preferred, they're loved, and they're chosen, irrespective of the economy in which we find ourselves or the competition. So we know that the world has changed, and therefore so must we. And so when expectations of customers and employees are very different, we surely need a different approach today to how we build our businesses, how we stand out, how we market, how we hire, etc. So we know that businesses today now have more of an obligation to share and to prove really why they are relevant and meaningful to those that they serve. We know that in today's environment, what we sell is no longer the story. So we're going to be here every Wednesday and every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern, holding virtual office hours. Hayley, good morning to you on the East Coast. I'm here on the West Coast. We are ready for another great session and great conversation this morning.
That's great. So at any time during our live streamed office hours here, you can ask us questions. You can put comments in the sidebar here on live comments. You can send us a private note also at purpose@storyforge.co. So if you want to send us a question, send us a comment or a complaint, you can always do that at purpose@storyforge.co. And you can send us your thoughts and your questions and emails throughout the week, and we'll address them on Wednesdays and Fridays when we're together. So Barry, you and I talk a couple times a week about our clients and about what we're seeing out there in the world, in the business world. And these last 6 or 8 weeks have brought so many interesting developments as we've watched businesses deal with and face the challenges that really everyone in the globe is facing right now with COVID-19. We're watching people really come out of this stronger, come through this in a way that's a lot more meaningful, and we're watching people struggle with how to do that. And there was a really interesting example that we talked about this week of a business thinking about how they have dealt with COVID and using a specific filter and framework for the decisions that they've had to make as a result of these changes. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that business. It's one of our favorites, so we follow it closely and have been impressed with their response.
That's right. So yesterday, the very large hospitality company, Airbnb, announced that they were laying off 1,500 of their employees. And that's a massive development for a company that was due to go public this year, had plans to go on the public markets this year. Prior to COVID, was growing at an incredible rate, had expanded into a bunch of other areas, luxury travel. They were luxury destinations, and also they were talking about luxury travel and transportation as a wing of the business or a branch of the business going forward. But this arrival of this pandemic has changed everything for the business. They recently got access to, I believe it was $2 billion in loan, in access to debt capital for their business, but they determined that it wasn't enough. So yesterday, the CEO, the co-founder, Brian Chesky, made the announcement that 1,500 of their employees would have to be, unfortunately, let go in order for the business to be able to survive. And there's a remarkable letter, which you can Google and find online, and it's on Airbnb's website, which he shared with the team. He shared publicly after he had had a conversation with the entire organization about these changes in the world and what that meant for the company. And he announced, in a very thoughtful way, considering the magnitude of the announcement and the challenges associated with letting anybody know that they no longer have a job. He shared with them how they came to this realization, how they came to this position where this became a necessity. And he framed it right out of the gate in terms of the purpose of Airbnb and how he was using this as a filter for thinking. And their purpose is belonging. It's to help people belong wherever they may be. And he recognized that he was now going to be letting people go. They were no longer going to belong to Airbnb, sadly, which meant that for some, they would no longer belong to this organization that's been part of for many years. But rather than just stop it at that and say, look, I'm sad to see you go, he instead listed all of the steps that they were going to take that were within their power, within their capabilities, within their resources to make sure that the team members were taken care of for as long as possible, and answered every question they may have about their stock vesting, about how much severance pay they might get, what it would mean for between now and the time they leave the company, and on and on and on. And it was a very thoughtful, heartfelt letter acknowledging that these are times that nobody expected to be in. But now that we're here, here's a very tough thing we have to do. And here's how we've thought about it. And here's how we have laid out a plan, knowing that this is the decision we've made. And I thought it was a remarkably honest and heartfelt and very tough letter to read. But I'd imagine if I was part of Airbnb reading that, I'd at least know that the company thought of my future and thought about me in ways that were more than just about the bottom line.
Yeah.
And I think that the benefit to that, for me, what's interesting is that before we came online this morning, I looked online and I could see very little negative pushback on Airbnb. Nobody calling out, how dare they say this, what a terrible decision they made, but rather they were being praised for their letter acknowledging how tough it was to make that decision.
Yeah. Yeah, there were two things about that really struck me. One, and there are two really conversations that we've been having a lot over the last couple of weeks with our clients. And one is about the importance and the centrality of understanding why you exist and using that as a part of your filter for decision making. Whether we're faced with incredible opportunities or we're faced with incredible challenges. And then the second is thinking about your stakeholders in a new way and recognizing that their needs may have changed and how you uniquely serve them may have changed. So the first was the purpose. So the fact that they went back to their purpose of belonging and helping people belong and used that purpose as their decision-making filter for how to think about scaling the company back. So they had so many, as you mentioned, Barry, so many different business avenues that they had pivoted into, so many different opportunities for continuing to advance that mission and that vision that they have of everyone feeling like they belong. But being able to go back to those core foundational truths about their business and use that as a decision-making filter in this time. That's one thing I found really heartening. And then that second piece about stakeholders, it reminded me, I was on a call this morning with some of our conscious capitalist colleagues, and one mentioned that he heard Danny Meyer speak a couple of weeks ago, and Danny Meyer talked about his employees. So Danny Meyer being one of the largest restaurateurs, most successful restaurateurs in the company, owner of Shake Shack and Gramercy Tavern and a bunch of other New York restaurants that us New Yorkers know and love and have for decades. And he is very, very focused on his employees, his staff, his chefs, his servers. They're a really important part of his organization. And he mentioned that he never before would have thought, A, that he'd need to lay off his entire staff, but also that he'd need to lay off his staff to keep them alive. So he had to go back to his core beliefs of what was he there to do? Was he there to put chefs to work? Was he there to put servers to work? Was it better for them to have a job with him? Or was it better for him and for them to know that he was doing the best thing for him actually by laying them off and allowing them to collect unemployment and to become part of one of those programs that the government has set up. So it's interesting to think about those two things in concert. Your purpose, what we're here to do, and our vision, and use those decision-making filters along with this new recognition of what our stakeholders really need and what they need now, and how we can best serve them now, which may be different from how we've served them in the past.
We often focus on decision-making in a positive sense towards growth or towards expansion. We don't often talk about decision-making in terms of these negatives that we're now, or these challenges that we're now facing. And we would argue that it's exactly the same filter for thinking that we use to decide how best to lay off 1,500 people, as well as how best to hire 1,500 people, or who are the best 1,500 people to hire. And I think that there were many ways that Airbnb could have severed ties with 1,500 people. But I would argue that how they did it in thinking, using their purpose as a filter for thinking helped ensure that they were able to do the most for those that they were letting go, not to create a public backlash despite the challenge. And I think we'd all understand that these circumstances require really tough decisions, but there are companies out there that are making very tough decisions in cutthroat ways.
Yeah.
So this was not just about the bottom line. It was, okay, what can we possibly afford to do to ensure you have access to things you need while we have some chance of ensuring the viability of the company.
Yeah. I also think one thing that's maybe dramatically changed, not just this year, but over the last number of years, but perhaps it's more visible this year, is that transparency is so key. Gone are the days where we can just say, we've made this decision for business reasons, or we've been constantly looking at different opportunities and this is the one we've chosen. Our stakeholders, whether they're our employees, they're our customers, they're the communities that we live in, our vendors, they want to know how we made decisions. And when we don't share that, when we are not transparent about how we came to the decisions, that's where I think we see the public backlash, because people are going to fill in all the reasons that they think you used to make these decisions unless you tell them how you got there. And if they can't follow the logic of it, and the logic doesn't have to do with caring about people, that's when you're going to be vilified. That's when the Twitter campaigns and the nasty grams are going to come over your social media.
It is about owning the story, isn't it? About ensuring that you own the narrative in these tough times, so that there isn't this gap where others can fill in their version of events, that you've covered all bases, you've explained honestly, emotionally, and truthfully why you're making that decision. It doesn't leave any room, does it, for others to come in and put their own spin on things?
It doesn't. And I think the other important thing there is to own the narrative. You have to live the narrative. So, I know in the worlds that we've both lived in before, we have heard narrative is to say, let's put a spin on this. Let's work on this. How are we spinning this to the public? There's no such thing as spin. Spin doesn't exist. Spin is a fallacy. You have to live the story that you're telling. And so whether it's all of the steps that you walked through that Airbnb's leaders are living, they're living their values, they're living the message that they're telling by supporting their employees as best they can. They also ended that note in a really wonderful way, talking about those people, how valuable what they were, how much, many great results they got for the company, that they were a part of the Airbnb family. And that was, I felt, a very heartfelt expression of care that was also about living that story, that narrative that they want to see out in the world. It reminded me of two other CEOs in the last couple of weeks who have had to lay people off. So one, Brian Schultz, who's the founder of Studio Movie Grill, talked about having to lay off his teams. And now he didn't talk about this, but one thing I've heard is that he got on the phone almost immediately and started calling other CEOs of other businesses, started calling call centers, other businesses that he knew were still operating, and saying, hey, I've got 30 people in your region, I've got 40 people in your region. Will you take a look at their resumes? They're good people. Another CEO that I know here in Columbus, Ohio, where I'm based, had exactly one employee and was able to hold on to that one employee for the last 6 weeks. And this week just had to announce to her customers and her suppliers and her community that she has had to let go that one employee. And I would say probably a quarter of the email was about that decision. A quarter of the email was about how that business is going to continue to try to fulfill their mission and purpose. And then probably the final quarter or the final third of it was talking about that employee and what an incredible leader she was, the results that she got for the organization, and encouraging anybody that had a position that needed that kind of skill set and those kind of capabilities would reach out to this employee because she'd be a valuable member of their team. So whether you have thousands of people on your payroll or you have one person, using your values and the things that you stand for as a filter for thinking, I think not just about the business decisions that you're making, but about how you deal with all the collateral from those business decisions.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch businesses react as they have to this new reality. And we know that this is something that in time, hopefully, not touch wood, will pass, and there will be a return to maybe a closer resemblance of the reality we had before. And our businesses are not just in it for the short term, they're in it for the long term, we hope. And somebody mentioned to me during the week that in 10 years' time, or even in 5 years' time, or perhaps in 2 years' time, potential employees for a company may ask how they dealt with this crisis, or how they managed to get through this, or what they did with their employees when this struck. And it'll be used as a filter for thinking about future employees about where they want to work. They're not hoping or assuming that all businesses can keep everybody on board, but it's rather, how did you deal with it, and how did you handle the tough situations that you were faced with? So I think that it's, we have a question that's similar to this from Rooney, and he asks, when companies are laying off, or in this case, let me see, he has 2 clients who have suffered over 70% furloughs and layoffs, mid-sized companies. How can they not take this market impact as a kind of a reflection of their value to the business ecosystem? So if a business lost 70% of its employees in a regular environment, I'm sure customers would be looking at that and wondering what's going on in that business. There must be something wrong. But today, this is not, sadly, this is not a standalone situation, is it? We're seeing many businesses are faced with these challenges. What would you say, Hayley, about an approach to ensuring that a business itself does not lose the perception of value because of the tough decisions it has to make?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think your point is the first one, which is for the leaders of that company to both understand and talk to their teams about the fact that we're not alone. If we were in a place where the market was in a different place and we were the only one having to lay off 70%, then it would be definitely a reason for us to look hard at ourselves, at our business, and at the value that we are providing to our customers, and question whether we're really delivering on that value. But right now, I think the first thing is simply to be at peace and recognize the situation that we are in. And you mentioned, Rooney, that those clients are in the healthcare field. So I would ask that business go back to the foundation of why they exist. What is that need that their stakeholders, that their customers, that their communities, that society has, that they are there to fill? What is that need that they're filling, and how are they better positioned than anyone else to fill that need? And from that insight, from those understandings of those foundational components of the business, that's where they can take strength from, pride in, inspiration from. Moments of crisis like this are certainly can bring on feelings of despair for leaders and leadership teams when they feel that somehow it's their fault. But as hard as it can be in those moments of despair, to look at this as an opportunity, because as hard as it is in that moment to see it as an opportunity, having to furlough or lay off 70% of your staff is an opportunity for you to re-engage the 30% that are there. It's an opportunity for you to demonstrate to all of your clients and customers how you're going to continue to deliver value through these difficult times. So it's a difficult thing, and it can feel really patronizing to a leader in the moment of great crisis to say, hey, look on the bright side, this is an opportunity. So we have to be very modulated in the way we talk to our clients, but helping them to see the opportunity that they have to use this crisis, to use these challenges as a time to emerge stronger, to emerge fitter, to emerge more aligned, to get everybody on the same page about what we're trying to achieve. In the moment, it's very difficult, but in the long term, it can help you become and help your clients become a much more sustainable business.
The 70% layoffs, which we're seeing in other companies, we're seeing bigger layoffs, we're seeing smaller layoffs, we're seeing, admittedly, layoffs. These are logical reactions to the environment. Something happened, and in reaction to that, we had to lay people off. In other words, we maybe lost a line of business. Our customers that used to pay us no longer pay us. Therefore, we cannot any longer afford. We tried to pay, but we've now reached the point where we can no longer afford to keep our employees. These are logical, rational responses, which I think, if communicated and shared honestly and openly, publicly, do not in any way reflect poorly on the leadership. However, the new reality, I think, of, okay, now we're at 30%. The clients that we had, the business lines that we had, are gone, or are on pause, or are gone away for a while, give us a whole new set of criteria to evaluate. So now the first thing I would suggest is that thing that our clients needed before, perhaps they no longer need or they can no longer pay for. So now we have a new reality. What is it that our clients need today, or that anybody needs today, that matches some service, some product we can provide at a price that they're able to pay, or that we're able to provide at a lower cost or at no cost, depending on the resources that we have. But it's about, I think the danger would be to constantly frame things and wonder how we now deal with things in light of how they used to be rather than how they now are and how they're going to be in the future. So we always talk about the difference between the things that stay the same and the things that are different. The things that stay the same, I'd imagine, are your morals, your beliefs, those things you stand for, maybe your vision for the world you want to see, the thing that got you out of bed in the morning, that purpose that drove you. Those are things that are probably evergreen, certainly for most companies that we've worked with. The things that have changed, though, have been how we go about fulfilling that purpose and what our stakeholders actually need. So the day-to-day tactics that we undertake and the evolving nature of our stakeholders in terms of and stakeholders like our customers, our employees, our communities, etc. Those things are always changing. So when those things change, how are we changing as an organization? It's a shock to the system to think you've got to lay people off. It can feel like a personal blow. I've had to lay people off in the past. It feels like you take it personally, you're a failure. You can't show your head, you can't show your face in public again. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say that's not the case, that you're actually responding rationally to a situation that you've been presented with. But it's what you do now that matters. Are we going to fold, or are we going to go forward with a new approach, knowing that the landscape is new, how we make decisions it has changed because our customers have changed and the world has changed.
Yeah, it's looking for those opportunities, I think, to re-ground people in what we're trying to achieve, and what does meaningful growth look like as a company? What does sustainable business operations look like? So, could we keep everyone employed for the next 5 months? Yes, we could do that. Will we then fold in 5 months? Yes, we will. So there's a sustainability of mission and vision and purpose as well that I think it can ground us in these times and help us make some of those difficult decisions.
Right. There is the danger of the whack-a-mole approach to the business, where it feels like we should just do something. Let's just a tactic, something, and then we'll do another one tomorrow. And then, oh, we've got a new challenge. What do we do today? And it becomes very tiring very quickly because it can seem like nothing's working. And I've been coming in here every day and I've been doing this thing and now I did another thing and now that hasn't worked. And I think the point we're making is we need to draw from our constants, the beliefs, the purpose, the vision, to make some kind of medium to longer term projection so that we can make better short-term decisions. Remind ourselves, what are we in this for? Why are we doing it? If it's not just to make money, what is it for? And then what are the things we could do bit by bit, day by day, that will hopefully get us closer to that vision, not just react to the thing today that may be at odds with our overall vision and may end up doing actually more damage to us in the long term.
Yes. Yeah. There's I think a normal human reaction in a crisis to rush to tactics. Because it feels good. I have 10 things on my list. I checked off 10 things. I have succeeded today. But it's a little like, to me, thinking about email. At the end of the day, I don't get to count my success or measure my success as a business owner by how many emails that I sent. I can spend all day just sending emails, but if I'm not counting the thing that's actually meaningful, if I don't know what to measure to determine whether or not I'm achieving my purpose and vision, then I could be measuring the wrong things, and often we do.
Right. Yep, absolutely. So we are here every Wednesday and Friday to talk about decision making, to talk about alignment, to talk about clarity for businesses in this really challenging time, so that others perhaps can learn from and maybe draw some inspiration, hopefully, from some of these successes that we're seeing despite these challenges, from some of the decisions that other businesses are making. I know as a business owner, it's always interesting and helpful and inspiring to learn from those that are perhaps that have gone before us or that are making decisions that we can learn from. So we're going to share those every Wednesday and Friday. And if you have any questions anytime during our live streams on Facebook and YouTube, feel free to type into the comments. We'll read them out and we'll do our best to answer them. And we've been getting some good comments every Wednesday and Friday. So thank you for that participation. Hayley, do you have any other thoughts you'd like to share with our audience this morning?
Well, maybe I'd like to echo something that you said, Barry. We have clients all over the world, actually, in multiple countries and across the United States. And we're seeing very different things happening as it relates to COVID. So there are some states, some industries, some businesses that are beginning to, quote unquote, open back up or go back to the workforce, go back to the workplace. We have other clients in other countries and other states where they're still under complete lockdown. So I would say as we begin to return to offices, just to recognize that there is no normal that we're returning to, that we cannot simply go back to the filters for thinking and the ways that we made decisions 6 or 8 weeks ago, that regardless of whether we've had the luxury of just putting our lives and our businesses on pause for 6 to 8 weeks, and now we're going back, we cannot use the same thinking that we used 8 weeks ago to make decisions today. So what got you here will not get you there when you're thinking about the future of your business. It's imperative for all business leaders to take time now more than ever to reflect, to make sure that they have a filter for thinking and a filter for decision making that works today, not the one that they used 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, or last year. So that would be something I'd implore everyone, every business founder, every CEO, every leader that's listening to this today, to make sure that you have taken the time to rethink, to create that framework of thinking for yourself or for your team, so that you don't take really urgent, disastrous missteps in these next couple of weeks if you're in one of those industries or businesses that's opening up again.
That's great advice. So what has changed in the world that you need to react to, and what has stayed the same in terms of your beliefs, your purpose, your vision that you'll always use as a filter for your thinking? So I think great advice there. So we will be back here every Wednesday and every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. We'd love you to join us. Ask any questions that you have. We'll do our very best to answer them. And if you have any questions that you'd rather send to us privately, you can do so by going to storyforge.co. You can schedule a call with us. We'd be happy to chat about your business and see if there's ways we can help you make a plan to move through these challenging times. So thanks to Hayley for joining in. The two of us are here again on Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and we will see you then.
Great. Thanks.